Oh my goodness, it's Friday. This is Stand Up. I am Pete Dominic. Very happy to have you listening today and any day that you can. I do it every day. I'm happy to have you whenever you join me. For those of you who join me every day, you're the most important people in the world. You really are the best human beings, and I can't thank you enough. If you're a paying subscriber, thank you very much. This show is brought to you by over almost 800 waivers, around 800 paying subscribers. And this week, also, the show is brought to you by electric toothbrush company called Quip. It's an awesome electric toothbrush. Go to getquip.com/standup. If you're thinking about getting an electric toothbrush because you don't take good enough care of your teeth, you don't brush for long enough, this is the one you want, and I really hope that you'll buy it. You buy the toothbrush, you're supporting this show as well. So go to getquip.com/standup right now. Joining me today on the program, brilliant writer, author, journalist Derek Thompson of The Atlantic magazine, here to talk about the Great Resignation, people leaving their jobs, as well as the supply chain issue in our country, and more. Always great to talk with Derek. And Christian Finnegan joins me as he does every Friday. And this is a very special conversation because we talk about his new comedy special, which I'll drop a couple clips in as well. So, awesome show. No news because it's Friday, and on Fridays I host the Hangout, except for last night. I couldn't host the Hangout for the second week in a row. It's killing me. I will tonight, though, 7 p.m. tonight, Friday, 7 East. I guess that makes it 4 West. It might be hard for you to... But we'll be going for a couple hours, I'm sure. So join us whenever you want. If you're a subscriber, we'll be hanging out starting at 7 East. The link should be in today's email if you are a subscriber. If you're not, go to standupwithpete.com. Anyway, I didn't do the Hangout last night because last Thursday I was in Florida supporting the Florida Education Association. And this Thursday, I was supporting diversity and inclusion in my school district where my daughters are in 8th and 11th grade. So I was one of the people who signed up to speak at the microphone. And I'm going to play that for you right now, and then I'll get to my guest. But I'll play you my 3 minutes from last night. The subject was diversity and inclusion and critical race theory. You've heard people discussing and this all around the country. Parents and communities are concerned. They're very concerned about what their kids are learning. And just for context here, one woman had just gone up and said that Columbus discovered America, and another guy talked about how activists were kamikazing in with their diversity and inclusion. That's what that's a reference to, as well as someone described was very mad about the summer book reading suggestions, recommendations, because they were heavy on racial awareness topics. And I think that's all the context you need, other than one woman did go up and say that she was 100% Puerto Rican, but that her kids were half Italian, half Irish. So giving her the benefit of doubt, maybe they're not her biological kids, but that was confusing. She said a lot of other things as well. And Pete Bradley, you hear me mention his name. He's a guy in the community that is speaking out against what I'm speaking out, but I have a good dialogue and a good relationship with the guy, and so I gave him credit on where we agreed, and here it is now.
Hello, my name is Pete Dominic. I have 2 daughters who are in 8th and 11th grade here in Clarkstown Schools. First, want to thank the board for volunteering during what has probably been the most challenging time to be on the Board of Education anywhere in our country in our lifetime, so thank you, sincerely. Just real quick, response to some other people. Christopher Columbus did not actually discover America. He never set foot in America, never set foot in North America. He actually discovered the Bahamas, but he thought it was India, and then he enslaved the natives. I disagree with my fellow community member who said that kids don't care about the color of their kids' skin or their religion. They do. We just heard from a parent just now. My kids were bullied and minimized because they aren't actually religious and don't believe in God. I remember it like it was yesterday. It happened at Lakewood schools. So if I believed, as many of my neighbors and fellow Clarkstown parents do, that my kids were being taught to be ashamed of who they are because they're white, I too would be upset. I would be mad. If I thought my kids were being taught to be ashamed of their country, I'd be shocked and upset at that as well. If I thought my kids were being taught that they were somehow lesser than another group of kids, that would be outrageous and shocking. But luckily, for all of us, there's been no evidence presented or arguments made that any of these things are being taught in our schools now or in the past. I think we hopefully have a consensus, not about what is happening in our schools now, but what should be the way forward. An argument has been made that critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion are the same, and that CRT is code for DEI. That is not remotely true. It'd be like saying chemistry is just code for biology. I do agree that we should be involved with our kids' education. Pete Bradley made that point today on Facebook. I vehemently agree with him on that. That we should get to know their teachers. I agree with him on that. That we should do our best to familiarize ourselves with the curriculum. I agree with him on that too. Nobody here, though, tonight can name a teacher, class, or school where CRT is being taught in Clarkstown. Isn't happening. Much of what our kids are learning in school includes debates and discussion. My daughter's 11th grade history class, Mr. Thompson, has his kids debating taxation without representation. Luckily, my daughter was assigned to argue on the right side of things, which made it easier to win the debate. This is what we want. Not an agenda or an indoctrination, discussion of competing ideas. I've taught my daughters about American history, racism, how to be anti-racist since they were born. We read books, we watch documentaries, travel, visit museums. Mostly, we talk and debate ideas. My girls are confident, they're independent, they're mostly fearless, they love the summer reading content, they're really curious about Japanese kamikaze pilots. If your kids feel guilty about his or her skin being white, that's not the fault of the school or the teacher, it's bad parenting. And if you could not yell at me while I'm talking, that'd be great. We aren't doing that. Falling back into what the world should never be is the goal of society. Instead, the goal should be to bring all people together. James Baldwin says the purpose of education is to create, I'm just finishing the sentence, a person the ability to look at the world for herself to make her his or own decisions. I was just finishing my sentence. I know, I'm just finishing my sentence. Thank you.
We're trying to be
I appreciate that.
Please, can we stop the clapping on both sides? It's not a popularity contest. We want to get information out and hear each other and be respectful. So please, let's hold the line on that. Thank you.
All right, well, I went long. I blew the light. I was trying to end with a James Baldwin quote, and I went over. I broke the rules. My bad. I was just trying to finish that final sentence. But so there you have it this week. This time I actually wrote it out, so I was a little more prepared. I wasn't planning to speak the first time I went up and went to one of these meetings and spoke. So I think this was a little bit better, more effective, and hopefully for the board. I wasn't trying to change the minds of community members who didn't agree with me, who had those concerns. I was more trying to convince the board, and we did. We think we did a good job. A lot of people showed up. We organized. And we are supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools, and it feels good to be a part of that movement locally. And so if you have any questions or advice or suggestions for what's going on in your town or what to do in mine, I'm happy to talk about that, and I will look forward to talking with you about it tomorrow at our hangout. All right, so first I have a conversation, coming up, Christian Finnegan, but first I've got the great Derek Thompson. Rob Dog out in California suggested that I invite Derek back on the show. I hadn't seen his latest articles, but Rob, thank you. You get credit for me booking Derek. But we talked about his piece, America is Running Out of Everything, and another piece of his, The Great Resignation, is accelerating. But the conversation, Derek, by the way, is the author, I should say. He's a staff writer at The Atlantic. He writes about economics, technology, and media. He's pretty much one of the smartest people writing of our generation of journalists and authors. He's the author of Hitmakers and the host of the podcast Crazy Genius. He's on Twitter at DK Thompson. I love this conversation. I always love my conversations with Derek. And we started by, I was telling him my daughter wanted to model. And so I was starting there, and he gave me advice about how his parents were with his pursuit of acting. And I thought it was really interesting. And that's where we start with Derek Thompson, the great Derek Thompson, right now. What do you say to your kid if you don't support their dream? My daughter is 14. She wants to do modeling, and I'm like, I can't support that. It's so weird. Do you have any advice for me right now?
Kind of. I mean, yeah. I have the advice of a non-father who used to be a son. I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, and I was a child actor, and I went to a bunch of auditions when I was in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and I acted in a bunch of professional shows in the DC area and went on to act at Northwestern, and basically acted until I couldn't act anymore, and then I became a journalist. And I love the fact that my mom had a perfect sort of theater mom perspective, which was, I'm going to support you, but not so much that it makes me feel uncomfortable or in any way, like negatively affects my life. So for example, I auditioned to be in To Kill a Mockingbird at a theater called the Only Theater in Maryland. And it was about an hour 15-minute drive from our house.
For the role of Boo Radley, I would imagine?
Not for the role of Boo Radley. I was for Scout's brother.
All right. Okay.
Jet. And I got the part. And this is a really like well-respected theater. And I was so excited about doing it. And I told my mom, I got the part. This is my huge breakthrough as an actor. And she was like, absolutely not. Like, you want me to drive you an hour to every rehearsal and an hour back? Like, that is too destructive for my life, for my ability to take care of your sister, for my ability to be a good wife. You don't get to do it. And so she was extremely I later got a role in DC at the Folger Shakespeare Theater, and I loved that a lot. And that was a 20-minute drive from home.
Oh, wow.
So might be a little bit of a longer answer than you were
it's great.
for. But I loved the fact, and, looking back, wanting kids now, look back at that and think, wow, it was a beautifully mature decision. Her ability to say, I support your dreams, and I'm going to help you fight for them, but not so much that they become a discomfort for our family. Like, the family is not going to unite around Derek. You're a member of a larger unit, and we're going to make decisions together. You're not the horse dragging this cart. And I think that was exactly the right attitude to take. And I know people who became actors and basically took over their entire family. The entire family became oriented around servicing this one kid's need. And those kids tend to grow up to be like kind of dicks because they're used to everything revolving around them. Not all of them, but some of them. And I was really happy that she made the decision to say, do whatever you want, but not if it implicates
your mom sounds awesome and helps me understand why you're such a kind of nuanced thinker and thoughtful guy. And my parents supported my pursuit of acting in comedy, but modeling, Derek, is not acting. Like girls already have these images, boys too. And it's like, I feel more importantly, and yes, who can afford to drive into New York City? The toll is $16. Parking's another $20. And you're going to go to an audition or a casting in this case, and it has no meritocracy. At least with acting, you could be good. Like modeling, it's like, oh, sorry, we don't like your eyebrows. Thanks for coming in. Well, that was $40. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I appreciate your answer, and I only responded there so people listening we could talk about it more. But I want to talk about your two of your most recent articles, which are so excellent, and you're the guy to be writing about these issues in The Atlantic. First of all, The Great Resignation. The title of the article is The Great Resignation is accelerating. The lasting effect of this pandemic will be a revolution in worker expectation. Fascinating thing that is happening, and a great article explaining a lot of the primary causes. So where do we start? Back in April, and you had written about this back then too.
Yeah, I've been on this for a year and a half. It occurred to me immediately when we all had to stay home that we were all going through this forced experiment. Not all of us. There were lots of people who had to go to work. They were cashiers, or they worked in businesses where they had to be on call. But a lot of people in the knowledge economy and the white collar economy had to stay home, and they've been experimenting with it. A lot of them seem to really like it. Things are opening up. Most of us are vaccinated, and yet a lot of us are making the decision that we're not going back into the office. And a lot of people who run offices are saying, I'm not going to open up the office. This is really, I think, going to be a revolution, the remote work revolution. But it is bigger than just the remote work revolution for white collar workers. You see what has been called the Great Resignation. Last month, 4 million people quit their job, the highest number ever, in accommodations and food services. So restaurants, hotels, bars, 1 in 14 employees quit their job last month. I mean, there is an enormous amount of churn in the labor market right now. And it's one of the reasons why you see wages rising, especially for low-income workers. That's a really, really important trend. But I think more broadly, this isn't just a great resignation. It's a great reset. A lot of people are trying to think about, where does work fit in my life? Where does work versus family versus, my own hobbies? How does it all fit together? And I think this is a period where, because we were forced to experiment with something that was so different for 18 months, a lot of us did, we are now thinking about getting back on the on-ramp toward like normal life? Do we really want to go back to the status quo anti-pandemic, or do we want a new kind of negotiation around work and life?
Yeah, it would seem that we've all discovered something that we love, that we'd miss if we went back. And that can be anything for anybody. But there's a lot of people just wagering, I cannot go back to what I was doing because this thing that I found from, be it a walk every morning with my dog or whatever it is, I wouldn't be able to do. And it's not worth it to me, even for $20,000 more or something. I know you don't cite a ton of those examples, but that's really what you're talking about is people finding new ways to live. And then you do say something about not being defined by their work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. One way that I described it, which might be a little bit weird, but just bear with me for just a second.
Yeah.
So for a long time, when we had to work in offices, we didn't really know what offices were doing. Like, what is the office? How is the office good for us? We didn't know because everyone just had to work in an office.
True.
It's kind of like what you wanted was a randomized control trial of offices, right? We have an RCT of vaccines.
Yeah.
And the way we do RCTs of vaccines is we say, okay, we have a control arm. You're going to get the arm goo. And we have this other arm where we're just going to put, fake arm goo in you. And some people are going to get vaccines. Some people won't. We can measure the difference between these two groups. We never had that with the office until now, right? We are in the RCT right now. We can compare our life in the last 18 months to our life in the previous 18 months and say what was better. And a lot of people, I think, are saying that despite the horrors, the many, many horrors of the pandemic, there's something about non-office life that just feels a little bit better. And now we can see exactly what is the office or what was the office doing. And what I think the office was doing is, you think about work and separate it into two big categories. There's hard work, which is like me writing, me calling people, you talking to me on the mic. And then there's what you could call soft work, like networking around the office, talking to someone about the NFL games over the weekend and maybe building a rapport that you can cash into a relationship later.
Yeah.
Offices are really good for soft work, right? That's what offices do. They're not that necessary for hard work for a lot of white collar workers, as proven by the fact that we've been just as productive, if not more productive, for the last 18 months. So the RCT, the randomized controlled trial of offices for the last 18 months, I think has shown offices are really good for some things, but they're not utterly necessary for hard work in the white collar workforce. And as a result, a lot of us are just going to, I think, move forward in our lives in the post-pandemic or late pandemic innings, not return to the office. And that is a huge sea change.
To punch a tiny hole in what you just thought and more to make a joke, I'll never forget back at Sirius when I asked my producer, hey, did you hear back from the social media team on the thing? And he goes, no, I emailed her yesterday, but I haven't heard back from her. And I was like, she's right there.
Yeah.
She's right over, she's 7 people away. Do you want to go over and ask her? Because we need an answer. She's right over there. But I guess the serious point is how conditioned we are to certain ways of communicating, and they can only be done that way. I never subscribe to that.
Just a quick point of that before I move on. I was going to, in February 2020, write an article for the magazine about why remote work was about to take off. This is before we knew there was going to be a pandemic, and I was predicting this is why I think remote work is going to take off. And one of the reasons I came up with my editor was that if you look around the magazine office, right? And I'm not going to be one of these people who's every company is just like a magazine. This is only my own experience.
Right.
But you look around the Atlantic office and everyone is quietly typing to each other in computers. I was like, we could just do this from home. No one's talking to each other. They're just typing at each other. We could do this from 1,000 bars or 1,000 cafes or 1,000 different houses. And then 2 months later, we had to. And it turned out that we were basically as productive. So this is what you're saying. Even when we were in offices, a lot of us were still working remotely together.
Yeah. But then, of course, there's that concern of actually typing the thing that could be used later on, that could be referenced. And the corporate culture is seemingly terrified of that. You write in this piece that you've been talking about this in spring. Quitting, you say, is a concept typically associated with losers and loafers. But this level of quitting is really an expression of optimism that says we can do better. And later in this paragraph, you say the Great Resignation is literally great. How so and for who, sir?
How so? I'll answer for who first. For who? Workers, not necessarily for bosses.
Right.
How so? Well, quitting, like I said, does sound like something for losers. But when you quit your job, for the most part, you are quitting your job because you think you can land somewhere else that's better. If you didn't think you could land somewhere else that's better, why would you quit your job? So if you see lots of people quitting their job, 1 in 30 Americans just last month quit their job. Why did they do so? Because there are 10 million job openings in the economy. So if you're working in a fast food restaurant in North Carolina or Tennessee, and you're making $9 an hour, and you are driving down the street to work, and you see that another fast food restaurant is paying $15, $16, $17 per hour, what are you going to do as a rational person? You're going to walk right into your restaurant and quit your job and go file for that other job that's right down the street. So one of the reasons why people are quitting their job isn't just that they want to quit their job and not work for the next 6 months. It's because they want to quit their job, sign up for one of the 10 million jobs that are open in the economy that tend to be paying more, and then jump to that one. So when you see quits at a record level, it's not because people are lazy. It's because of the exact opposite. People want to do the same amount of work for more money. And so they're quitting.
And play me the violin, which is true for managers, bosses, and employers themselves. I'm not demonizing them. You're not demonizing them either, but there are fewer of them, and they've done pretty well during these times.
Yeah, right. There are fewer managers. They tend to be richer. There are fewer bosses. They tend to be richer, and they tend to have equity, right? They're more related to the capital rather than to labor.
Yeah.
I am not an anti-manager person. I'm certainly not an anti-entrepreneurship person. Like we want great employers in this country because great employers can pay employees good money. At the same time, right now, it's clearly very difficult to be an employer in lots of segments of the U.S. economy, particularly in leisure and hospitality, particularly in accommodation food services. If you're running a restaurant, if you're running a hotel, if you're running a bar, if you're running one of these companies where there are lots of quits, it's just difficult to be a manager, right? Like 1 in 14 of your workers quitting every single month. At that rate, in 14 months, your entire labor force is going to turn over. That's really, really hard. So very briefly, I will play that tiny violin for the managers and bosses because it is tough right now, I think, to be a manager or a boss. There's lots of screwiness in the economy, but at the same time, there are tens and millions of workers. And right now, I think this is a better than average time to be a worker.
Well said. Now, how do you want to? I should be a better moderator, host, interviewer to connect this article to another piece of yours recently titled "America is Running Out of Everything: The Global Supply Chain Slowing Down at the Very Moment When Americans Are Demanding That It Go into Overdrive." You can connect these two articles better than I could force. What is the connection between the Great Resignation and the supply chain and America running out of everything?
So you've got the Great Resignation. And the Great Resignation is, in some ways, a labor shortage. But we don't just have a shortage of labor. We have a shortage of labor and a shortage of electronics and a shortage of masks and a shortage of toys and a shortage of everything that requires a supply chain that reaches into Vietnam and Malaysia and China. There's a shortage of just about everything. I mean, when I go to the grocery store or the pharmacy, I see way more empty shelves than I used to. And so, Americans right now are dealing with this sort of paradoxical thing where we are demanding more, we are spending more, we're buying a lot of hard goods, but all that demand is flowing through supply chains that have not grown commensurate to that demand. And as a result, you have all the problems that people read about in the newspaper and see on television. You've got the container ships that are bobbing off the coast of California. You've got backed up rail. You've got a 60,000 trucker shortage, which is making it harder to move things from the interior of the U.S. to the ports. You've just got a lot of a hydra of bottlenecks. And as a result, that hydra bottlenecks, I think, is going to spill over into Christmas, and it's going to make this holiday season a little bit difficult for parents because the toys they want to buy their kids are not going to arrive on time. And
just to be clear, the primary cause of both the Great Resignation and the supply chain being choked, the hydra of bottlenecks, I love it, is the pandemic, is COVID-19. If we were to say one main thing that's the catalyst, and maybe you don't want to even water it, maybe there are other circumstances.
Yeah, I would say it's not the first order effects of the pandemic. It's not the virus itself. It's the second order effects of the pandemic, right? So the pandemic starts. What did we do? We passed a huge relief bill to send $1 trillion to families in the form of $1,000 checks. So we sent a lot of checks. We raised unemployment insurance. We had a rent moratorium. We had student loan forgiveness. Families didn't spend as much on leisure and hospitality. They didn't go on trips. What does all of that mean? Well, it means the family's been saving a lot of money over the last 18 months, spending less on services, spending less on goods. Now, suddenly, in early 2021, they start buying a lot of stuff. They start finally buying all that hardware for, fixing up their house. Well, when everyone starts buying a lot of stuff, demand increases, goes to the roof. Supply chains do not increase. As a result, you've got all these bottlenecks that start stacking up. And so you have, yes, a supply chain bottleneck, a shortage of everything, a shortage of hard goods. And then you also have, because a lot of families have all the savings and they don't have to jump for the first desperation job they see in the classified section. You have people holding out of the labor market for now. And as a result, there's a labor shortage as well. So you add it all up. It's the second order effects of the pandemic that have created a hardware shortage and a labor shortage.
Derek Thompson, one of the few people who is as good at talking about his articles as he is at writing them. You write, for decades, many U.S. companies moved manufacturing overseas, taking advantage of cheaper labor and cheaper materials across the oceans. In normal times, America benefits from global trade, and the price of offshoring is borne by the unlucky few de-industrialized regions. But the pandemic and the supply chain breakdown are a reminder that the decline in manufacturing can be felt more broadly during the crisis than when we run out of, well, damn near everything. So the main question is, do we ever get back to making stuff here? Is that ever cost effective in our economic system, the way that it works, that if there were something similar to happen in the future, and it's likely, unfortunately, that it might, that we wouldn't run into similar problems?
I don't think we need to make everything here. I am not saying we need to make we don't have a crisis of toothbrushes. Like, it sucks if people want to buy a toothbrush at CVS. There's not a toothbrush there because the supply chain woes. But we're dealing with a very, very strange situation in terms of excess demand right now, and that's not going to last forever. What I do think we need to think more seriously about is having a kind of national security oriented plan to build everything that we need in the US. So that would include something like masks. Maybe we should build more container ships. Maybe we should build more glass vials because we're running out of those. I think we should think about reshoring a lot of manufacturing that fits into the category of essentials, especially in the category of national security essentials, because we don't want, I think, to rely on just-in-time supply chains for things that are absolutely essential to the national security and health of the country.
You didn't mention antibiotics or semiconductors. Do we make those here?
Definitely think about both of them. Yeah. I mean, the semiconductor shortage has been terrible for, the car companies and everything. I think it'd be a fantastic idea to reshore some semiconductor manufacturing. And yeah, we have more expensive labor than in Eastern Asia, but I would hope that we could bring technology and automation to bear in some of those factories so that we can make semiconductors at a competitive price. And then when it comes to antibiotics, I actually don't know a whole lot about antibiotic supply chain, so I don't want to over-comment there, but it does seem like it would be wise for us to participate more in that supply chain, because we've seen, for example, with the shutdown of India, which is deeply responsible for the manufacture of a lot of medicines, especially for the developing world. The shutdown of India with Delta has had huge disruptions. So over relying on one country for a supply chain as important as medicine, can have these bad trickle-down effects.
I haven't seen any blame be laid that's really been that effective. Of course, you're always going to blame the incumbent politicians, in this case, Joe Biden, president, when this is happening. But I guess, and commentators and pundits, of course, but are there corporate leaders and consolidated, organizations that represent corporate leaders that are advocating or arguing for one government policy versus another to streamline the current choke on the supply chain? Is there anything government can do that corporate leaders are demanding, the shipping companies are demanding, et cetera?
I'm not an expert on this, but I definitely feel like there is a surprisingly bipartisan interest in reshoring American manufacturing for a variety of reasons, right? And frankly, that variety of reasons is a good thing. If there's only one reason, then that one reason can be debated. But, if your J.D. Vances and Marco Rubios want to reshore manufacturing to make America great again, but also you have left-wing pro-employment types who want to reshore American manufacturing to get high-paying, high-skilled jobs back in the U.S., and you also have some people that are just interested in, what I would call the abundance agenda, what people like Ezra Klein have called supply chain progressivism, who want to make sure that if America is going to be in the business of redistributing, it should probably be also be in the business of creating enough stuff that can be redistributed. Well, then maybe we should have, an explicit plan to build more essentials in the U.S. I think that there is a surprisingly bipartisan movement to think about reshoring American productive capacity, but exactly how that shakes out in legislation, I'm not sure.
I'm glad you answered it that way, but I guess more specifically, I meant right now, all those containers, which, by the way, you're telling me right now is not a good time to build a container home, because I'm kind of interested in having a tiny house in a container. But you said they went up from like $2,500 to $25,000 for the container itself. But what I guess
actually that was for the renting of the container. So book publishers that rent containers to distribute like tens of thousands of books from the print factories overseas. They used to be able to rent the container for $2,500. Now they rent it for $25,000. The container itself, I think, is more expensive.
But there's nothing that government could do right now to bring all those containers that are off the coast of California. Like, no one seems to be screaming or clamoring that there's a solution that is not being implemented, that there's red tape that's not necessarily being cut. Like, federal government seems.
Yeah, I mean, the port's backed up, and you have to unpack those containers, and you need humans to unpack those containers, and you can run the ports 24/7. Biden has announced that. You can beg FedEx and UPS to hire more people and run longer hours. Biden has suggested that. But I'm not sure what else can be done in the next few weeks. This is a problem. This is, the house is on fire. And when the house is on fire, you can't talk about rebuilding it, right? You have to put out the fire, right? And so the equivalent of the water being, splashed on the burning house, that's Biden telling the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, can you please go to 24/7? And I think they've said yes. All
right, just the last thing, I'm just going back to the Great Resignation, just the question about, and you do mention this, just the government aid to everybody, basically. Does that create an atmosphere of laziness? So people are just getting paid to not work. How important was that at the federal level or the state level? And where are we at now with that aid being a motivating factor as to whether or not people are going to work, taking jobs that they didn't necessarily want?
Yeah, I'm not so concerned about people being paid not to work in the long term. I think what we're dealing with right now is a short-term phenomenon of a labor shortage created by excess savings during the pandemic that was the result of a bunch of things: stimulus and expanded UI and people saving money and not splurging on anything because basically a lot of the services economy was shut down. But eventually people are going to go back to work. They probably only have a couple $1,000s of savings. That's going to get them through a few months. They're going to come back to work, and I hope that work pays them more. So, I feel like the U.S. Has so much money. We are such a rich country. I would rather that we overspend a little bit in order to remove suffering, rather than worry that, maybe if we spend that extra $300 a month, we might lose 0.3% of the workforce. So what? If we lose 0.3% of the workforce, we lose 0.3% of the workforce. Let's bring in more immigrants to do that work. I want us to have social policy that is fairly generous, with the expectation that it's not going to eliminate the need to work. It's not going to eliminate people's need to feel like they are producing for their family.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Derek Thompson. So great talking to you. I always appreciate it. Subscribe to The Atlantic, follow Derek, listen to the podcast, and everything else. I'll put it all in the show links. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, man.
Well, there you go. Derek Thompson. How about it? He's on Twitter at DK Thompson. Subscribe to The Atlantic and let him know that you heard him here on the show. I loved that conversation. I love reading his articles. I always learn so much. He does great research and he writes so good about it, as well as, and he can really talk about it as well. Such a great communicator. Love talking to young Derek Thompson. Always seems so young and impressive to me. And now it's time to get to my regular Friday guest, my friend, one of my favorite comedians of all time, Christian Finnegan. And guess what? He has a new comedy special out. We call them pandemic specials because they're, any special that was taped during the pandemic it's hard because A, you're not able to get on stage and try the material out, and B, how do you do a live performance when nobody's really allowed to leave? Well, Christian taped this back in September at his wife's venue, QED, in Astoria. It's called Show Your Work. I want to play a clip from it, from one of my favorite clips right now.
Are you guys familiar with the two wolves parable? Do you know what that is? It is a Native American folk story. So you know that it's going to be wise, right? Because that's the brand. The idea is that within each and every one of us exist two wolves, and one wolf represents positivity and joy and love, and the other wolf represents negativity and hatred and fear. And those two wolves are fighting with each and every one of you. Now, which wolf do you think will win that fight? The one that you feed, right? Right? Pretty wise, right? Now, again, I did not make that up. It's literally like a Facebook meme. I think it originated in the Zuckerberg tribe, if I'm not mistaken. But it resonates with me. It makes sense. So I am doing my best every day in 2020 to feed the positivity wolf as much as possible. The problem is, as far as dinner companions go, negativity wolf and I have a little bit more in common. You know, like, it just flows better with the negativity wolf. Like, first of all, positivity wolf doesn't even want to meet you for dinner. He wants to meet you for breakfast. 7 a.m. egg whites. He wants me to seize the day as if the day has ever done anything to me. Whereas, like, negativity wolf, he's more flexible. He'll eat on your schedule, when and where you want to. Negativity wolf will even meet you for one of those late night fuck it meals. Like, have you ever had that experience where you're driving home at like midnight and you've had a terrible night and you just see the golden arches in front of you and you're like, ah, fuck it. You know what I mean? Like, negativity wolf is in the passenger seat, ready to go halvesies on a 20-piece nugget. The conversation just flows better. Positivity wolf wants to talk about how much potential I have, how I can do anything I set my mind to, how maybe I don't need another pint glass full of Maker's Mark and Diet Mountain Dew. Boring. Negativity wolf gets down to brass tacks. It's like, all right, here's how I see this going. We'll spend maybe an hour and a half cataloging all of your personal failures. Then we'll hate scroll Twitter for a while, jerk off, take a nap. Oh, Neggy, you read my mind.
We had to move out of our apartment.
Oh, Neggy, you read my mind. Christian Finnegan, show your work, available on YouTube and available on iTunes, everywhere. Go to christianfinnegan.com right now. And now let's get to the man who made that special, our favorite Friday guest, Christian Finnegan.
Lost in brooding sentimentality, it's Finnegan Fridays. Sigh.
Okay, I've got him now, and Christian Finnegan joins me every Friday, but this is a special Friday because this is the week his new comedy special has dropped, his pandemic special, as we kind of call them, which I guess refers to it was taped during the pandemic, and we can talk about that. But Christian, I just wanted to surprise you by saying I thought it'd be best to interview you like right after I watched it. So I whenever I knew you were going to schedule it, whatever time worked, I was going to watch it right before, so I'd be like an audience member walking out. And I have to say, I am disappointed.
I know. You're going to be one of those audience members that gives me that sort of tight smile and nod as you walk by after the show. That's the worst. When you see people and they're just kind of like, they know they have to acknowledge you, but you can tell that they weren't totally into the show and they just kind of give you like a...
Well, of course, the worst is when they walk past you to the other comic. And
oh, yeah. To go to the opener and think, you should have been the headliner. Yeah. That people who don't do comedy don't understand that, like, featuring, or what they call middling, is the sweetest gig in comedy. Like, not financially or in terms of prestige, but in terms of the show itself, it is perfect because you're not going up to a cold crowd, but you only have to carry it for 20 to 30 minutes. And you just kill. And in a club, you don't have to deal with a check drop or anything like that. And so, you really are set up to succeed. And so when you're featuring on the road, quite often people will come up to you afterwards and they'll be like, you are so much better than the headliner. Like, you should have been the headliner. And the first couple times it happens, you really kind of like, oh, this must be because I'm so brilliant. And then once you're headlining and you see somebody give you that little nod and then lean into the feature comic, like, oh no, I know what they're saying.
How do you? I think the most interesting question, is the reaction that when you, the feature, got that yourself. How are you supposed to handle it? You see the headliner looking at you or not. Either way, what are you supposed to do? Wink and say you're right. Catch me.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable. And also, it's like in a lot of circumstances, you don't realize like we're friends. Like this person's a friend of mine, or at the very least, a peer. And it's
or you
just
explain what you just. The best response is, no, listen, I only got 25 strong minutes. Those are my best 25 or whatever.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
It's a tough. It's no matter what, it's a tough position to be put in. No, so
in his defense, the headliner was very drunk tonight.
Yeah, I used to get you were better than Colbert when I was the fluffer, and I would be like, oh no, I'm doing something similar every night that I'm positive that works, and he's doing a completely original program every night, and also I'm making jokes about things that are happening to us in the moment, which is funnier than scripted often, and the only thing funnier than that is America's Funniest Home Videos watching someone run into something. So I can't compete with that. But it's always the idea that they're making these comparisons that are wildly inappropriate to the comic, but they have no idea about any of those variables.
No, of course not. Of course not. But, God bless you for showing up.
Yeah. And I am better than Colbert.
Duh.
So my reaction was that you've undersold.
Yeah, I've been trying to avoid getting down to the nitty gritty of what you actually thought about.
You've undersold it.
I guess we're going to have
to.
You
undersold it.
I did?
Yeah, really, for sure. I didn't know that there was like this kind of original production. Maybe it's because it's not a thing to talk about or something. But
I worried about overselling that, and so I kind of did undersell it a little bit.
It's a hard thing to say. Anyway, but there's this interstitials of you in real life, and I loved it. I hope people buy it, both the video and the audio. And if you listen to Christian and you like Christian here on the show and you don't buy it, what does that say about you, I think?
It's a very good question.
The listener,
this should be a moment of soul searching for all of you.
Yeah, I think they need a little time. So go right now, show your work. Christian Finnegan, show your work. Write it down. Do whatever. Make a voice memo. Go buy it. But I'm saying you have to watch it. You can listen to it, and it's great. I think so.
It's a different experience. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you want to put out an album because you want it on rotation and Spotify and Sirius and things like that.
Money there.
But no, it really is. It's a special, and it's not just a stand up. There's a visual element to it, and there's some light doc elements to it, and it's a different animal visually than it is audio wise, for sure.
I also just think that it's great. I just love it for so many reasons. I have a full note card filled with notes and things to reference, and I'm going to drop bits. I'm going to drop bits right in our conversation, and hopefully that seems smooth.
I thought you were meaning you were going to give me like punch ups, like hey, you should do this. Like here's a line. Did you ever get somebody who tries to punch up a bit that you've already put on an album, and you're like, dude, where were you 3 years ago?
Yeah. That's. I'm trying to remember, but no, I've got nothing to punch up at all. I really enjoyed so much of it. You covered a bunch of different things, and you did this. I think the most challenging part was it was done during the pandemic in September, right?
Yeah, September of 2020,
and you didn't know who was going to win the election, which you solved for. Not that there was a huge chunk that was political. Most of it's all evergreen, of course. But
there's a good 10 minutes that's sort of about the then oncoming election, or 5 minutes about it.
But it was great. How do you do that? How do you do that and make it actually evergreen? And you did it because you basically, the jokes are about, what you predict were going to happen to you. And you're like, am I at a labor camp or something? Very funny way that you did that. For the reason, totally.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just loved how many different types of things you talked about. But for our conversation, I think there's one thing that I thought was really important and special, and I'm not even sure that you probably do realize that you did it. You and I have talked a lot about your personal life, your life growing. We've talked about everything here on this podcast over the last couple of years, and you've talked a lot about your mom and her mental illness. But that audience that night didn't necessarily know that about your mom. And you dropped in, you literally said the line, because my mom had a severe mental illness, and you were even more specific. And then you did the joke. And what I took away from it was how within that moment, you made the entire audience feel completely comfortable and destigmatize mental illness almost as if it was normal. And I really thought that was important and really important. So I wanted to say that.
You know what? Let's listen to a little bit of that bit right now.
This is something that happened to me when I was 7 years old, and my older brother John was 9. And we came home on Christmas Eve. We had a half day of school, and my mother was in a panic. And she said, we got to get in the car because right now we have to go out, we have to buy a piñata. No, she's right to be weirded out. That's very strange. That's a very strange thing to want to do on Christmas Eve. I should say for the record, my mother was severely mentally ill. She had borderline personality disorder, which you don't know when you're 7 years old. You're just like, wow, mommy's fun. Until she's not. But at 7 years old, piñata, I'm in, right? I'm like, piñata, piñata, piñata. And so we drove around, and I don't know if any of you have ever tried to purchase a piñata in December in suburban Massachusetts. It's not a real big Mexi culture, but we went to Sears, we went to Kmart, we went to Leechmere, R.I.P. And finally, we found like a place that had one of those just Cinco de Mayo donkeys. And my brother John was like, Mom, that's a donkey. And she's like, it's a reindeer. And he's like, but Mom, it's yellow and purple and green. It's a Mexican reindeer. Feliz Navidad. And so we brought home this piñata, and I was like ready to go. I'm like, piñata, piñata, piñata. And my mom's like, no, you have to wait until your father gets home. Which I knew was going to ruin everything because my father is a lovely man. He's mellowed out a lot over the years. But when I was a kid, my dad would show up every day at like 6 o'clock from work, just filled to the brim with Irish Catholic impotent rage. Did anybody have a dad who would like swear through clenched teeth and like until I was 12, I thought my dad's jaw was wired shut. It's like all the time.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, that is definitely something I kind of wrestled with. It's something I wrestle with a lot, because there's a lot of material that I would love to do about both my mother and my brothers who passed away. But to have to get over that hurdle of like, hey, they're dead. It's fine. I'm going to joke about it now. Like, but you have to get that exposition out. And I've never really cracked the nut of how to address that. I did a little bit when I had a solo show that I took to Edinburgh, the Fringe Festival a couple of years ago. But that's in kind of a one-man show context. And you have a little bit more leeway to sort of be storytellery as opposed to just straight stand-up. But yeah, in a 15-minute set, it's really kind of weird to be like, hey, here's a joke about a dead person. You know what I mean? Without people thinking that you're covering up from some deep-seated, depression or sadness about it.
Yeah, I did.
It's like,
I that is a completely normal concern to have. As a viewer of that, I did not think that at all. I thought, the thing about the bit you're talking about. Yeah, I kind of just learned is just like treat it like just a piece of exposition that like in order to appreciate the story, you have to know X. And that's sort of how I treated that. Well, I appreciate you saying that, though. Thank you. Yeah, no, well, I mean, you have been able to talk about it, your mom, and how it's affected you in every format, though, from, a one-person show or the format, whatever you're talking about at Edinburgh, whatever you did there, to stand up, to here on the podcast often. And I just think, it's super important that people talk about their own mental illnesses, their family members' mental illnesses, and how that impacted them and how they dealt with it. And if you can joke about it like you can now, it's great. And I think it's just helpful. And I'm not, that's not
Thank you.
what you're going for necessarily, but that was a result. And
yeah, it's funny because, we've spent a lot of time destigmatizing mental illness, which is obviously a net positive, like massively, for people to be able to talk about the struggles they have. But it's still a little bit verboten to talk about the struggles of a person struggling, like the struggles of a person dealing with someone struggling with mental illness, because it is still a little bit, it almost feels like you're trying to shame someone for mental illness. And with the case with my mother, I guess I am a little bit because we were estranged and we didn't get along terribly well. And that aspect of her, existence was definitely contributed. But, it is hard sometimes because like, I know that we all want to be empathetic and it's very important, but, it's also kind of funny. You know what I mean? Like when you have a mother who has, these weird delusions of grandeur and sort of has these episodes and whatnot, it's like, that's funny. I'm sorry. I want to talk about that on stage without looking like I'm, slamming her,
I mean, what's not funny is when you talked about buying a Christmas tree growing up, and you said that, you know, the trunk, something, if that the trunk was crooked, like it had scoliosis. Of course, you know that my daughter suffers with scoliosis, and I
did not know that, actually.
I think you knew it, and I think that's why you. Okay. I think that joke was like a subtweet at me, at my daughter.
Yep. Yes, it definitely was. You know what? It was probably some deep seated. Like, I probably knew you would see it at some point. It probably did inspire just a sort of a passive aggressive.
Well, you can expect
rage.
You can expect the scoliosis community to come for you and deplatform you.
Well, they'll amble towards me. That's it. I'm sorry.
See, your ignorance as to what people with this affliction can and can't do is also offensive.
It is. I know.
There are some really.
I'm spine shaming.
My daughter's going to listen to this, and you're going to have to talk directly to her.
She's not going to listen to this. Your daughters don't listen to your podcast, you weirdo.
No, I'm going to make her listen to this so that she can. I don't want to sit here and speak for her. Also,
I can't imagine any teenage child being like, I'm going to listen to my dad's daily podcast. That's how I'm going to spend my free time.
I'm going to tag this episode with anything related to scoliosis so that people find this. I'm also going to release this clip to the community.
You son of a bitch.
I was also surprised to hear you attack the trans community so much in this special.
Well, I feel like it's very of the moment. And you know what? I understand the dry wit that you are employing in this moment, but I would not want to abuse anyone of that notion. No, I don't believe there's any anti-trans material in my special.
And the other end, just while I'm talking about where I was offended in this special, you do a joke about a baguette, and at one point you pronounced it baguette. And without any context to the rest of that joke, I was offended. And that is how our society works. Maybe it isn't. No one said anything about that one, actually. All right. Sorry.
No, but I mean, you know, that is sort of the joke I'm making.
Yeah,
I mean, in a way, you know, that when you call it a baguette, it doesn't sound nearly as fancy. It sounds more hate crimey.
Hate crimey. That's what made me laugh. Hate crimey. The Y is perfect for this example. So I mean, you were able to make serial killings funny. That was one of my favorite bits.
People don't know this. I actually do murder 3 of the audience members in the show. I
the same way.
Yeah. Yes. I put mirrors in their eyes so they can, so I can look at myself, and then I masturbate over their corpses.
I loved it, man.
Sorry, I love Red Dragon.
I loved how my favorite thing, I'm leaving now. My favorite thing I want to, is how you kind of commented on, is Ophira Eisenberg, you know, talks about the positivity culture and always making fun of that. And you took on the two wolves theory, which is a great theory. And you're talking about how you're trying to make yourself, it was so honest and great. And as you talked about that old parable, and it was so funny, and I just thought that was probably the most brilliant thing you did. A lot of very smart things, but I really loved you taking that on, because it's a parable that I subscribe to, that my wife gave me.
I do too.
I know you do.
I mean, yeah.
I know you did, and that's what's great about it. That's what's great. When you subscribe to a theory, a quote, a parable, there are exceptions, and my wife loves to criticize some of my most inspired quotes. Quotes that inspire me.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. I think you actually follow that. I want to follow that and fail at doing so. But I see in you, like, I think you innately live that way. That's one of the things I envy about you, is that you really do seem to, at least in your public facing existence, you know, to me and to your listeners and stuff like that, you seem to default towards the positive. Not that you're always sunshine and, you know, moonbeams, but, you know, all things being equal, you will gravitate towards the positive angle on something, you know, that is something that I struggle with. I tend to feel much more comfortable in the negative aspect of things.
Well, that's I think that's true of me, and I think that's as a result of a lot of things. I wonder what you think it's a result of in terms of where you land on that spectrum, and there's no wrong answer. but there's no wrong way to
it's a mix of nature and nurture. I think, I do think that there is just some genetic predisposition that some people have towards being front facing and positive. And, one of the most, and it's because it's not all nurture. Like maybe the most positive person I've ever met in my life, a friend of mine from high school who I'm still friends with, he is the smiliest, most cheerful guy in the world, just unbelievably kind and gracious to everyone he meets. And, he walked in on his father trying to commit suicide once, when he was a kid. And so it's like, that'd be the kind of thing that if it was all nurture, that would maybe dispose you towards negativity, but not this dude, because I think he had those inner reserves of positivity that just would counteract that. And other people, they can live their life tiptoeing through the tulips and have everything go wonderfully, but there's just some dark something in their brain matter that makes them steer negative.
I wonder if the adjective dark is unfair, because I was thinking just now, maybe for the first time, when you were talking about that, about me, when you're describing me, I was like, is it true? Is what he's saying true of me? And I was like, yeah, I think it's generally true. I think that about myself. I think that people that know me think that about me. And if so, why? And I started, and then why wouldn't you or my wife or somebody else who's on a different part of the spectrum think that? And I was thinking, maybe it's because, and I'm not being self critical. I'm just being like, maybe it's not, I'm not smart or thoughtful enough to think through certain things. And let me finish. Like, quotes and inspiring poems really worked on me. The guy who showed up for the assembly and gave the motivational speech absolutely got me. You, my wife, others would be like, I got questions about that, and read between the lines, where I'd be like, I won't quit then. Don't quit.
When you see a kitten hanging from a tree, you think, yeah, hang in there, baby.
Yes, I see that, and I smile, and I think I do a small fist pump, and I go about my day.
Yeah. And when you see 2 footprints in the sand, that's when he was carrying you.
I let my dog in the shed while I'm trying to talk to you, and it's really distracting. Sorry.
That's all right.
No, I don't. The footprints.
I don't think. Well, I will.
I never bought the foot.
I will counteract that slightly.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Say it again.
The religious stuff. Always, just to be clear, I know you're joking about that, but like the Jesus, like that stuff, turned me away. I did question that stuff a lot.
Right. But just pure kind of motivational,
No, religion scared me. It made me depressed, and it made me scared to die, and all the other stuff, secular stuff, motivational speakers worked on me. I guess is what I'm saying.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I do want to disabuse you of the notion that being nice is somehow a form of like stupidity, or like intelligent people are sad. Because that is a trap that I feel like a lot of people fall into, men and women, I guess. Like, certainly a trap I fell into when I was in my high school and college years. But, a friend of mine once said that kindness is a form of intelligence. And I didn't fully believe it at the time, but it's something I've really grown. I wouldn't say a natural sunny disposition says intelligence or lack of intelligence, but I do think that kindness, as you get older, kindness tells me that you have a broad perspective and that you are able to sort of understand how your actions fit into others' actions. You know what I mean? That you have an appreciation for the breadth of human experience, and that you're not just locked into everybody isn't a minor character in the play of you.
Yeah. I would strike when you said that smart people are somehow not, you said nice. I think we were talking about happy or
yes,
sad.
You're right. I'm probably conflating two things.
And it made me think, I guess, if there's this stereotype, this idea that highly educated or highly intelligent people tend to be more depressed, I wasn't familiar with it. I would actually have made a different assumption, but then you made me start thinking about like some of the smartest people I know, and I'm like, that guy too. But more importantly, what you said is, I love what you said about kindness is another measurement for intelligence. Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Because just real quick, I thought about this recently. About a year ago, I was listening to a podcast, Dan Harris's podcast, and he was talking to this woman. Basically, my grandmother was very poor with no education, but she took everybody in and raised like a ton of people in her house. She was the kindest person. And I started thinking about her as like, that is the best way you can be in a way, and is really a smart way to be. And she was happy, I think. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. And I do think that a lot of times there's a chicken and an egg thing. It's like, okay, well, are smart people depressed, or are depressed people the kind of people who will bury themselves in books, and then become smart because they don't really want to engage with large groups of people, or they're not particularly social or whatever, so you can kind of argue it from either direction there.
Yeah. And it's just thoughtful. It's an interesting discussion, I think, the one that we're having about it. And I love how you have examined so much about yourself for this special and for your whole career. I think it's also what people really like about you, how honest and
thank you. Yeah. I mean, my main sort of principle when we were doing the shooting of it and the editing of it is like, I want it to be the opposite of badass, like the exact polar opposite.
That's great.
Because first of all, it wasn't an option. I mean, if it'd be one thing if there were 20,000 people clamoring to see me at Madison Square Garden, maybe then I would have gone the badass route.
Sure,
but I don't,
leather.
But let's, I think as Lyndon Johnson said, hang a lantern on your problems, that rather than try to gloss them over so that people can't see, like if you're running for office and you have like a glaring fault, like bring attention to it to yourself so that to whatever. And so this is a pandemic special. It was 28 people socially distanced, back when we, literally were measuring 6 feet between all the tables, even though it was outside and all that. And so it couldn't be impressive if it wanted to be on that sort of classic stand-up special way. And so like, let's really fucking lean into that. And rather than have like, flames in the background and like, like a raging guitar or like hip hop beats in the background, it's like, no, this is much more about kind of just like, this is what I'm doing to get through this, fucked up period.
I love that you put into words what I certainly experienced in watching it and in talking to you. This is who you are as well. Being super honest helps us relate to ourselves and to other people in our lives. And I just, that's why I value your friendship as much as you having these conversations with me publicly. And I'm sure other people share that. I'm going to let you go because I know you don't have a lot of time. It's promotional week. I hope everybody buys the special both on YouTube, where I bought it on YouTube, on Google rather. Go to YouTube. Yeah,
you can do it. Google Play, YouTube, Amazon. What's the other? Apple TV.
Well, you have a great link tree, so I'll connect to that in the show notes, and everybody should get it there, and of course at iTunes as well, right? The best place.
Sure. Yep. And so you can also just find a link to it on my website, which my newly refurbished, very streamlined website, ChristianFinnegan.com.
You did an excellent job with this special. I know how hard you worked on it. I know how hard it was. And even, doing anything for anybody, particularly getting out of bed and some days during that time, during the last couple of years, has been hard. I don't know how you had such great material and how you performed it so well, not having that much stage time, but you nailed it. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really, really impressed. And I love the hell out of you. Thank you for joining me today, as always, pal.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay, there you go. Christian Finnegan, the new special, Show Your Work. It is available everywhere that you find comedy online. Watch the video. I ordered it on Google and through YouTube, but I also bought it on iTunes. You can buy it on iTunes, like he said. And Christian's on Twitter, as always, at Christ Finnegan, or just go to ChristianFinnegan.com and all the information is there. Please go buy his special. Support Christian. He supports me and joins me every Friday. I love him very much, and I was very happy to have him, as well as Derek Thompson, DK Thompson on Twitter. Read him at The Atlantic. And don't forget to get your toothbrush. They've been our sponsor all week. It's the Quip electric toothbrush. GetQuip.com/stand-up. All right, that's it for me. I'll see you tonight at the Hangout. If you want to join a rare Friday night Hangout, 7 p.m., hope to see you there if you're a subscriber. And maybe this man will be there, Jon Carroll, who takes us out each and every day with his amazing song he wrote just for us. You can buy that now as well. It's Jon Carroll. Stand up. Have a great weekend, everybody. Love it. Stare the devil straight in the eye. They got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie.
up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw the land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.